Well, we'll go ahead and get started. First, we'll start off with introductions. My name is Reiner Sinkulas. I'm the Director of Operations and Programs here at the Michelson 20mm Foundation. I've been with the foundation for about 4.5 years. I started with the organization as the lead of our textbook affordability initiative, launched this Spark Grant program, and now I work with a variety of our programs across the foundation, including the digital equity team, to help grow their work. I'll hand it off to my colleague Crystal so that they can introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Cristal Mojica. I'm the Senior Program Manager for the Digital Equity Initiative at Michelson 20mm Foundation. I've been with the team since May of last year. And prior to my work here, I used to work in a few different nonprofits, working with BIPOC women in STEM and entrepreneurship and supporting those communities in their careers. So I'm happy to be here and happy to share this opportunity with all of you.
So just an overview of our agenda for today. We're first going to provide you with some insights around our organization as a whole, let you know a bit about some of the other areas of work we do beyond digital equity. And then we'll really get into the meat and potatoes of the conversation, which is a discussion of our Spark Grant program, a review of what our application process looks like. And then at the end, we'll highlight some previous awardees, both in the digital equity space as well as in other spaces. That way, you all will kind of have a better sense of the types of projects and organizations that we typically support. At the end, we'll open it up for a Q&A. Please, during the course of this discussion today, if you have questions, you can direct them into the Q&A. We'll either answer them live during this presentation, or again, we'll have time sort of towards the end to answer that. So a little bit of background about us as an organization. We are founded and funded by Dr. Gary K. Michelson. Dr. Michelson is a retired orthopedic surgeon who made his fortune in inventing medical devices and then patenting those devices. He has since retired from medicine and devotes himself entirely to philanthropy. We are one of an umbrella of organizations that Dr. Michelson supports. Aside from the Michelson 20mm Foundation, there's also the Michelson Medical Research Foundation and the Michelson Found Animals Foundation, which is focused on animal welfare. And here at 20mm, our goal is to really accelerate progress towards a more just world. And we do that through a variety of different initiatives, but whether that be tech entrepreneurship, policy endeavors, really hoping to activate humanity's full potential through equitable education and economic opportunities. And obviously underlying all of that is digital equity, which we'll talk about shortly. But before highlighting our focus in digital equity, I wanted to briefly mention some of the other core initiatives that are part of the 20 Million Minds Foundation. So as I mentioned, Dr. Michelson got his start in inventing medical devices and patenting those devices. And so he's very passionate about bringing intellectual property education to the masses. The Michelson Institute for Intellectual Property has actually created a curriculum that is available free and online and works to integrate it into institutions of higher education with the whole idea of democratizing intellectual property. Dr. Michelson is very passionate about giving inventors, students, entrepreneurs, the tools to capitalize on their inventions, similar to how he did. Another area of our work is our impact investing. So here we do targeted investing in for-profit companies that are specific to areas of issues that we care about. So education technology is a very common one. Workforce development as well. And then the three other areas that I will quickly highlight, and we have Spark Grant rounds around these three initiatives as well. Coming up in next quarter will be our Open Educational Resources rounds. But the Open Educational Resource Initiative is really focused on reducing the burden of high-cost instructional materials. OER are openly licensed materials that faculty can adopt, and therefore, again, remove a barrier for students as they're looking to successfully complete higher education. Our Smart Justice program looks at the intersection of the criminal justice system and the higher education system, and looks to support individuals that have been impacted by the justice system, both while they're currently incarcerated and perhaps attending an educational program inside, as they're transitioning out and transitioning to a campus to continue their education or to a job, or as they're on campus looking to get a degree. As I mentioned, we also do a lot of work in and around workforce development in that effort. And then finally, our Student Basic Needs initiative. That focuses on issues that, again, are barriers to students completing higher education, simply because of financial reasons. So think of housing, food insecurity. And so that team looks to tackle those initiatives primarily within the state of California. I'll pass it over to Cristal, who can talk a little bit more in-depthly about what our digital equity program is focused on.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, so the Digital Equity Initiative kicked off a couple of years ago, and we have a few different buckets of work, including our Digital Equity Pooled Fund, this Spark Grants mechanism. We work with tribal communities to fund the broadband boot camps with our partner ILSR. And so through all of those projects, our goal is to convene partners in philanthropy to accelerate digital inclusion investments, launch programs that surface innovative solutions and technologies. We look to scale initiatives that are working to address the digital divide from different angles. And we support education and awareness and capacity building efforts that will help surface policy solutions, particularly at the state level, to promote digital equity. Next slide, please. The overview for Spark Grants. So as I mentioned before, we look to fund highly impactful initiatives that can be scaled. We try to introduce just-in-time grant making to meet urgent needs of the organizations that we work with are in need of. Our commitment is to make decisions on applications within 6 weeks of our proposal call closing. And the timeline for this grant cycle is that we will open on February 27th and close on March 13th. So coming up. Next slide, please. A couple other important notes around the Spark Grant program. So the program is available to US-based nonprofits. For this round, we've decided to focus on organizations that are doing work in California. We also want to fund efforts that are scalable and will have an impact statewide. We will not be funding initiatives at this time that provide direct assistance or provide devices. We do recognize that there is a need for that type of work, but our approach is to try to fund systemic change. Given how large of a challenge you're tackling, we understand that the grant funds may be a part of a larger project, and we welcome that in the application. So multiple funding streams, totally fine. I think back to you, Ryan.
Awesome. Thanks, Cristal. And just to provide some context, I would say generally we receive anywhere from 35 to 45. I would say 40 is kind of the average sweet spot of initial LOIs. And we'll talk about sort of what our process looks like. From those initial LOIs, generally we invite about 25% of those forward to a full application. And then we generally will be funding anywhere from 3 to 5 grants total. Nonprofits are certainly eligible for these award, educational institutions as well. We've funded dollars through foundations. If there's other setups that you all have questions about, certainly feel free to reach out. Again, if you do have a question throughout this presentation, please go ahead and drop it in the Q&A, and then we'll go ahead and answer it at the end. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we look at and how we evaluate proposals that come in. And we look at these 6 different dimensions to really get a better sense of how to best deploy our dollars. And we'll walk through each of these as well, just so that you have a better sense of kind of what we're looking for. So the first is baseline criteria. Do you meet the baseline criteria? Our grants are up to $25,000. So we would support projects that are 20, 25. We ask organizations to submit. We are focused on our dollars going towards a specific project or a specific pilot program, inflection point within. Maybe you're looking to expand or grow a specific project. We do not have the ability to fund general operating expenses. So again, dollars would be allocated towards what that project is going to be. We can fund staff time. So there have been proposals where we have organizations submit to have staff time allocated with grant funding. That's totally acceptable. As Crystal mentioned, we're okay with our dollars being combined with other organizations' dollars. One of the common questions that we get is, for this project, what is the timeline that you're looking to support? I would say, generally we see, 6 months to a year. $25,000 can kind of only get you so far from a time perspective. Very large end, we do see some projects on the 18 months timeline, but that's fairly rare and I would say not as common. I did see a question that was already posted in the Q&A around sort of budgets items. So we do allow indirect expenses. That needs to be capped at 10%. That question was submitted anonymously, so I'm hoping that this slide answered that in kind of my conversation as well. But if we didn't for whatever reason, please feel free to kind of ask again in that Q&A. I'll toss it over to Crystal, who would talk a little bit about our key focus areas. So what the projects you submit will be focused around and what we're looking to support.
Thanks, Ryan. Next slide. Yeah, thank you. So every year we come up with a handful, like 3 to 4 focus areas within digital equity that we're looking to fund. These are developed in partnership with our community advisors, and we try to align them with what's going on at the state level and local level within the digital equity space. So the first focus area we have here is digital equity as a social determinant of health. So we recognize that digital equity is a part of our daily lives across education, health, economic opportunity, civic engagement. So we welcome applications from any projects that are within any of those kind of focus areas. And if you have any questions about, whether this would fall under one of those, feel free to reach out. Next slide, please. Another focus area is eliminating digital discrimination. So in the fall, we had an event with the FCC regarding their call for comments around digital discrimination, price discrimination in California specifically. So we are looking for projects that help highlight these disparities to policymakers, anyone who really has the power to ensure that the funding that is coming out is going to be distributed equitably and that industry is being held accountable. So anything that is involving data, research, storytelling, testimonial gathering, we're very excited about. Next slide. The next two are policy advocacy and civic engagement. So in the past, we've funded efforts that have helped educate the public on participating in the regulatory processes at the state level, workshops and things like that. So I think later we'll bring up some more specific examples, but anything that helps build capacity around participation in these processes, we welcome, and that can be local, regional, or state level. And then digital equity in tribal communities. So any projects that help build capacity, support education and workforce development in tribal communities, we also welcome. And so dimensions of, is this still me, Ryan? Sorry. I don't want to jump in.
Yeah.
take it away from you.
No, yeah, it is. I think you'll kind of walk us through the rest of the dimensions of evaluation, but I'm also happy to jump in. I know your voice is fading, so let me know what would be best.
No, all good, all good. Yeah, so some of the dimensions of evaluation that we'll be using are a potential impact of the grant. So how many folks will be benefiting from this work? What is the impact of the project? And how likely is it that this project will be successful, and how will you measure the success? And that's what I meant. Yeah, so again, measuring having some metrics for the success of the project, and a sense of the project timeline. Yeah, we also take a look at the organization that will be carrying out the project, and the capacity within the organization to actually carry out the work as it exists at the time of application. And then again, just to really hammer it in, the scalability of the project is something that we really look at. And so if it's, it may be a local effort or a regional effort, but if it's something that the state of California as a whole can benefit from or use as a model, that is something that we look at very positively. And this includes initiatives and partnerships.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Crystal. I'll jump in and take these next few. But again, if you have questions about sort of what our evaluation criteria is, please feel free to reach out. I'm going to talk a bit now about kind of the process of how you go about applying. So I'll drop the link to this site in the chat, but on our Spark Grant webpage, there'll be a button that will say submit a proposal. Obviously, right now it's directing you all to register for this webinar. But within the next few days, that will be updated. The portal will open on February 27th, and it will remain open until March 13th. In that link, if you go right now, you'll actually be able to download PDF versions of both the LOI, letter of interest, or the full application. We review proposals on an ongoing basis, so I would certainly encourage you to submit early. When you do submit, you will get a copy of that. The other thing, just to mention, as I mentioned, we do invite people to full applications. So once we review that LOI, we'll invite organizations to that full application. Sorry, I've lost control of the slides. We use a platform called Submittable for our grant management system. So when you see that button to submit a proposal, you'll create an account on Submittable, and then all of the communications that occur with us throughout the cycle will be occurring through Submittable. I would highly recommend that you safe list Submittable as in your email client. I just dropped a link in the chat as to how to do that. We also send a reminder to individuals as they're submitting their LOI to do that as well. If you have any questions throughout the process, feel free to reach out to me. I'm not the technical person on Submittable though. So if there is a issue with the platform, a technical issue of any sort, I would highly recommend reaching out to support@submittable.com. We of course can provide assistance as needed as well. So feel free to reach out to us, but support@submittable.com is going to be probably the best option. I'm going to talk briefly about our grant committee, and then I'll throw it to Crystal, who can talk a little bit more about the Spark community advisors that we mentioned. So our grant committee is made up of our team. So as you can see, both myself and Crystal, also our CEO, Phil Kim, as well as our COO, Myra Lombera. Both of those individuals have been with the Michelson organization for over a decade. And then our colleague, Miguel Leon, who actually launched the Digital Equity Initiative back in 2020. So these are kind of the individuals who will be reviewing proposals as they're coming in, making determinations and evaluations. Crystal, you want to talk a little bit about the Spark Community Advisor team that you assembled?
Yeah, so we were really lucky to have some of these folks in the previous Spark Grant round. So that we've been working with them for some time, but we're really lucky to have Natalie Gonzalez on the advisory committee this year. She's the deputy director for the Digital Equity Initiative at California Community Foundation. She's doing really great work with the California Alliance for Digital Equity, and we're really excited to have her on board. And then we've been working with Chris Mitchell for some time, and he is a part of the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. He's been running the tribal broadband boot camps, has a lot of experience in the communities, and really just educating folks on the technical aspect of what we're dealing with broadband and kind of the latest technologies requirements and what constitutes reliable, good quality internet. And then Ana Teresa Dan was an advisor last year. She's the managing director for Great Public Schools Now, GPSN, who we're a big fan of. They're doing amazing work on the ground. You may have seen some of their toolkit materials going around recently for the inaccurate priority areas of that the CPUC released in the last few weeks, and for Los Angeles specifically. So we're really lucky to have these great minds, advising on kind of which direction we should take this work in. Next slide. So a little bit about the evaluation process. So after your LOI is submitted, our grant committee, which is the first set of folks that Ryan shared, will do an initial assessment. And within 6 business days, we'll reach back out and notify if you'll be moving forward in the process. If you do advance, you'll have to submit a full application, and we may send over some additional questions about your project if any came up during our initial review. And then we may schedule a follow-up call with folks who advance into the final stage to gather any additional information. And so within 6 weeks overall, you will be notified of our decision. And then this is just the visual vision of what I just mentioned.
Awesome. Thanks, Crystal. And I'll just flag, we're really excited. This is the first time, actually, I guess the second time now that we've had a Spark Community Advisor cohort helping us to sort of make our decisions. So really, lucky and grateful to have those experts to help us review the finalists as they are coming down the pipe. So we're going to shift now and talk about some of the past digital equity awardees in the Spark grant process. And apologies, Crystal, I mixed up. It's you still kind of moving forward. So I'll turn it back to you. I got confused.
No, thank you for moving it along. Yeah, next slide. Yeah. So here we have a few different past grantees and just some of the work that we funded. So everyone on, it's been an amazing partner. They're a nonprofit. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with them, dedicated to creating social and economic opportunities by connecting families to affordable internet and devices and digital skills training. So our grant supported the development of their training program, including nonprofits like K-12 and public housing agencies. Next slide. We also funded PPIC to examine the digital equity gaps and how they've changed from spring of 2020 to 2021. One of their reports is actually coming out in March, so keep an eye out for that. And we're really excited actually to be working with PPIC this summer on a digital equity policy summit of sorts. So we do have a continuing relationship with a lot of our past grantees. And we also have Unite LA, which ensures the improvement of cradle to career public education and workforce development systems in LA. We funded them through one of our Spark grants in partnership with the LA County Economic Development Corporation. And we launched the Digital Equity Action League with them, which was a regional consortium focused on eliminating the digital divide. And yeah, next slide. And then with one of the Spark grants, USC expanded their Connected Communities and Inclusive Growth project from LA County to cover the entirety of California. So it's a scalable effort that we funded.
Awesome. Thanks, Crystal. And now it is my time to talk about some of our past awardees. I'm going to highlight some of the non-digital equity Spark grantees. And again, I think we just wanted to share these to give you a better sense of, even though that they are not focused on the issue area that you all are probably focused on, types of projects that we find appealing. Again, encourage people to drop questions into the Q&A. I've been doing my best to type some answers in there, but certainly please, we'll have some time once we finish this section of reviewing answers in the Q&A. The first organization that I wanted to highlight is the Forestry and Fire Recruitment Program. So this is an organization that supports both currently incarcerated and formerly incarcerated individuals. The goal is to help them get careers in the wildland and forestry sector. Obviously, this is a huge issue in the state of California with the wildfire situation, how climate change is affecting things. So we have actually supported this organization a few times. One of those grants supported an expansion of their efforts into the Bay Area. I think this is a really good example for two reasons. One, we're helping a program that has been proven out in Southern California expand their reach into another area of the state. Also, this is the type of thing where our dollars were combined with other dollars to support. Obviously, $25,000 was not all the funds they needed to make that expansion, but kind of two examples of things that we find generally appealing, or things we've mentioned previously, but kind of now concrete with this example. Impact Justice is another organization that's focused on working with individuals who have been involved in the criminal justice system. They launched the California Justice Leaders. It is the first of its kind AmeriCorps program specifically for individuals who have been involved in the justice system. So we helped launch that pilot. Again, our dollars were combined with other dollars. We have since, actually just in this past Spark grant cycle, awarded an additional grant to Impact Justice. They now have over 100 alumni members because this program was launched in 2019, and they're looking to strengthen that alumni network. So we're really excited to be able to continue to support them. Again, staying within our smart justice focus, UCI Lifted is a program based at University of California, Irvine. Just this fall, they launched their first ever in-prison degree program. So this is the first time in the state's history that a UC program will be offering a bachelor's in prison. So we're really excited to support that and hope that it will be able to expand once this has proven out really across the state and across the UC system. And then just two more to quickly mention, US Public Interest Research Group, or US PIRG. This is focused on our textbook affordability work. We funded a report that looked at the textbook industry's new strategy to capture the market called automatic billing, also known as inclusive access. This report had recommendations around how schools should engage with institutions that are offering inclusive access, what they should negotiate in order to best set students up for success and protect their interests. This research paper was cited in numerous lawsuits against textbook publishers on antitrust grounds, and has really spurred a lot of effort in the field around putting guardrails for automatic textbook billing. So research is always something that we're interested in supporting, especially if it can kind of scale to impact beyond just that research. And then the last one that I will highlight is a grant that we made to Cal State Long Beach. So our grant supports the development of a best practices model for a family-friendly campus for pregnant and parenting students. Pregnant and parenting students is one of the foci of our work in our Student Basic Needs Initiative, and this grant actually really kicked off some of those efforts. What we're excited about is not only will this model be impacting students at CSULB, but they will be working with the Chancellor's office to disseminate these training materials across the CSU campuses. And again, that gets to that scalability aspect. While the work is being done at one campus, there is the ability to share resources and have a larger impact because of these materials that are created. So again, those are just some examples of past Spark grantees to kind of hopefully, I guess, give you some ideas or give you some insights into generally what we're interested in supporting. We'll open it now into the Q&A part of the conversation. So if you have a question, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A. We'll start to kind of slowly poke through those. Additionally, if you want to reach out to us directly, our emails are on the screen, pretty easy, Crystal@20mm.org and Brian@20mm.org. I would certainly encourage you, if you want to have a conversation with us in advance of submitting a proposal, I think that would definitely be valuable. Oftentimes during those conversations, it can kind of go one of two ways. One, you shoot us an email with a quick summary, and either we hop on or we can send you a message back and say, I'm not sure that this is quite aligned with what we're looking to support. And then it sort of saves you some time of filling out that LOI. Or we could say, yeah, that is very interesting. Please make sure that you include information X, Y, or Z to provide you with a little bit more context. So always happy to have those conversations in advance of that LOI. The last thing that I'll mention, which I think I forgot to mention earlier, is the LOI has a few questions, but I would say the real heart of it is a 500-word, I guess, abstract, for lack of a better term, around what your project is and what the impact will be. So that's kind of the real heart of what you'll be submitting in the LOI. So with that, we'll turn it over to the Q&A portion. I'll read these aloud. If I can't answer them, I will, or Crystal, I might divert some of these to you. This question comes from Carol Simmons. I work with an organization in California that provides digital equity training to underserved seniors in multiple languages. Would we qualify for innovative curriculum development or train the trainer initiatives? Crystal, I'll kind of point that one over to you. Is that the type of project that would be appealing? Is it something that they might want to reach out to you to describe a little bit more of what they're looking to do?
Yeah, so I think definitely the senior community or elder communities are something that we've been thinking about, and how to better support them and not leave them behind. And so I think this would be very interesting, but I would welcome some more details just so we can give some more guidance, maybe on which of the focus areas would be the best fit for it. So yeah, feel free to send me an email with a few more details around that.
Great. Omar asks, while funds can't be used for personal devices, laptops, hotspots, etc., can funds be used for infrastructure/prototypes that can be used in a trial by a large number of people at a regional scale? I think the answer to this would be yes, Crystal. It sounds like kind of testing out something that would provide access to larger numbers of people. But again, I'll defer to you for that specific question.
Yeah, I think the scalable aspect of it would be something that would be interesting for us to look at.
There was an anonymous question. Would you mind clarifying again regarding funding staff based on hours? For example, can grad students be hired and get paid under the grant? Yes, absolutely. We have seen many instances of that where a school, a department, whatever, sort of says, hey, we're going to bring on a grad student to help us with that work. These grant dollars will, fund that person's time. We're actually quite big fans of that, mainly because we really like to have students get involved in the work and hopefully then kind of like, spur on their further work in the field. So certainly something that, yeah, we would support. Would adult-based workforce development programs with a digital equity training module also qualify for this grant funding? That is a good question. Crystal, I might defer it to you. This seems like something where we might want a little bit more information, though.
Yeah, I think it would. I think it would depend on how it's set up and maybe even the timeline for it. I know workforce development is something that we've been interested as a foundation in developing, like an initiative for. So yeah, I would welcome more information on this project.
Sure. Well, yeah, certainly shoot Crystal an email with additional information, anonymous attendee. I would say I have seen in the past organizations that have sort of, one small component of a larger project be focused on like what we're interested in, and generally that is not something that we find appealing. So again, I'm not sure about the details here, and that's why I think it would just be important to reach out and provide us with a little bit more information via email. Can partnerships be higher education institutions, continuing education programs, schools, or workforce development CBOs who would like to pilot a high intermediate to advanced level course for office upskill? Yeah, again, I'll always defer to you here, Crystal, but that seems like something that would be appealing. I think we'd be really interested in learning, what you're looking at in the pilot, what you're hoping to measure, and then like what would be the plans beyond the pilot.
Yeah, I agree, Ryan. I think you covered all of it.
My company is a startup learning and digital textbook platform for high school students and higher education faculty. Can you tell me if there are grant funding opportunities for companies like us? Thanks, Shelton. We are going to have a Spark Grant cycle focused on our textbook affordability and open educational resources work in Q2 of this year, excuse me. So we'll probably be announcing that sometime in April or so. If you haven't already, I would encourage you to sign up for our Spark Grant newsletter email list. You can do that on the Spark Grant website. And I linked that in the chat earlier. Can funding be utilized for student incentives? I may have read wrong, but device subsidies are not allowed, correct? Yes, device subsidies are not allowed. It gets very challenging from our perspective to, if someone were to say, we want to supply 10 mobile hotspots, and I'm just throwing out random numbers here, to students at our school versus, the 3 other schools who are kind of all asking for the same thing. In terms of student incentives, I think we're certainly open to that. Obviously, I'm not quite sure what you mean there, but we have had instances where, we've supported research. There are student surveys that occur via that research. And we send, incentives are provided so that people will kind of complete a survey or something like that. Is it possible to schedule a call with someone from the Michelson 20MM Foundation before we reach the finalist stage? Yeah, we certainly are willing to have conversations throughout the process, if that would be helpful. So certainly, if there's something specific that you want to share, and for whatever reason that it's not able to do that within Submittable, we can certainly do that. I would say, I would certainly encourage people to have those conversations before submitting your LOI. I think they've been the most fruitful, and then also allows us to have like larger insights when we get into our committee conversations. Because, so that would be kind of my recommendation. There will be a recording of this presentation available. Everyone will get a recording as well as these slides to this deck. Are previous grantees eligible to reapply for Spark Grants? Yes, they are, certainly. Obviously, I think, if we just awarded a grant to an organization, we might not be as likely to do that, but certainly, if it made sense, if it was a good fit, we would be open to that. All right, a few more questions. Our project aims to understand the current landscape and barriers for marginalized groups, racial minority and low income, their digital access and ability to use e-health services and their health outcomes. would our project be of interest to you? I will turn that one over to you, Crystal.
Yeah, my initial reaction is that that would probably fit well under the social determinants of health focus area. But if you have an overview of the project, want us to take a look at it before you fill out anything else, I'm happy to read through it. But yeah, my initial reaction is that yes, it would be a good fit.
Could the grant be used for accessibility trainings, 508, ADA, in terms of creating inclusive digital learning experiences? Crystal, I don't know if you have any thoughts there.
Yeah, this one's a little bit less clear to me. That's something that maybe I would want to bring back to the group just to discuss. Yeah, because we did fund for the Center for Accessible Technology before. That is a previous grantee of ours. But I'd have to go back and look at kind of how we worked with that focus. So I don't know.
Yeah, and if you want to send an email directly to Crystal with maybe a little bit more information, as I'm reading this, I hear like textbooks pinging in my brain. I know that that's a large issue where like OER materials also need to be 508 compliant. Obviously, there's kind of some overlap in that most OER materials are digital. Again, not knowing more context from your question, it would seem like that might be a better fit for our open educational resources focus, but certainly please reach out to us with more details. I think this question has already been answered, but to clarify, would an org that does digital equity work, small scale infrastructure projects, and policy advocacy training with rural and remote indigenous communities in the United States and Canada be eligible? I'm almost positive that is a yes, but Crystal?
Yes.
Seems like exactly what we like to support.
Yeah.
Mark, the only caveat that I'll put in that is that we are looking for that work to impact Californians. Obviously, that can happen in a variety of different ways. If your efforts are, working on, federal technical regulations, that would have an impact on Californians. But yeah, certainly the way that you described your work, I think we would be interested. Do you prefer projects that are student-led? I mean, it's certainly a positive aspect. I don't think it is, the be-all and end-all of a proposal, but certainly I think we look favorably on ones that are student-led, but there are a variety of factors that kind of go into our decision process as well. All right, these questions keep coming fast and furious. Addressing digital equity with people or people with disabilities and work for inclusion, and would that be an idea you would fund? Nelly, I would say definitely shoot us a bit more information around that. I think we just don't necessarily know enough about what you're looking to potentially do. So yeah, certainly please shoot us an email. James says, I represent the Nevada Prison Education Project, and along with representatives from California, Oregon, and Washington, we are hoping to develop a Western alliance centered on post-secondary prison programming. Obviously, we can cover all the significant concerns in this context. So in terms of your Smart Justice Initiative, would it be possible to apply for funds to pay for conference-type gathering to help consolidate our efforts? Yes, so we won't be doing another Spark grant cycle for the Smart Justice Project until Q4 of this year. We actually just announced the grantees from the last cycle last month. I would encourage you, James, to shoot me an email with a little bit more information, and then I can direct you to the person who oversees our Smart Justice work. And that way they can just kind of chat with you a little bit more, learn a little bit more, and see if there's an opportunity for us to get involved in some capacity. Okay, and then question 22, currently the last question, but certainly keep submitting if you have more. With scalability as a major focus of this grant, do you have an idea of the size of the nonprofits that you typically support? That's a great question. I wish I had these numbers off the top of my head. frankly, I do not. I would say generally we have not funded very, very new organizations. I think that size of the organization has been less of a concern for us. I mean, PPIC, which is one of the examples that Cristal highlighted, is certainly like a very large, very big budget organization. I think on the other end of that spectrum, and I wouldn't even consider them small, but someone like an Everyone On, where Cristal, I mean, I'm not sure how many staff members they have, but it's probably well under 10. And a much smaller budget, I'm guessing. So we don't necessarily have a demarcation line or anything like that. But certainly this question prompts me to kind of go back and start looking at budgetary trends and staffing trends, et cetera. So I appreciate the question.
Yeah, and I want to say the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, who we've funded before, I believe is still under 30 people.
No.
Yeah.
And I mean, we funded one organization based out in San Diego for some digital equity work that I think had, 3 to 4 staff members. I mean, they were really tiny organization. Well, that kind of hits all the questions that were shared in the Q&A. So really appreciate everyone's time today. As I mentioned, we are more than happy to have conversations coming up and out of this. So please feel free to reach out. I will say, in full disclosure, Cristal is certainly the expert. So if you have questions about, hey, is my project, of interest, definitely direct those to her. Anything that I get, obviously I'll forward over to her as well. But yeah, really appreciate everyone's time today. And with that, we'll end the webinar. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.